I had one of the most miserable races about 18 months ago, I think, and it was Zion 100. It was a 100-mile race, and I was beat up at mile 30, which was way too early for me, considering what I've done in the past, and it was definitely like, I ran the race wrong. I know that. It's just like, when you're beat up 30 miles into 100, and at least for me, I knew that shouldn't have been the case. I just ran my race poorly. It was really hard to think about 70 miles. Anyone who's done 100 gets it. And so it was really hard, especially because then there were thoughts of like, well, maybe it's not your day, give up, right? Well, this is what I've learned that can help, and what did help me in that moment to finish the actual race. What I like to do before races, and you get better at it over time because you have more experiences to reflect on. One of the things I do before races is I think about, how do I respond when things go bad? You could write this down. I'm pretty good visually, like at least in my head, or being able to list things out. And though writing it down I think would be pretty effective too, is I think about, if X happens, I do Y. And you can do this with all sorts of things. And so one of the things I've thought a lot about is, if I'm too beat up to run, what do I do? Well, I walk, but it seems simple. But in that moment, I'm less, like, I'm not beating myself up. So at mile 30, when I had to start walking a little bit more instead of running, it didn't affect me as much if I hadn't thought that through. Like, if I had just been like, well, I'm beat up, now what? I know it seems simple, just walk. Like, we've heard all the quotes of like, when you can't run, walk. When you can't walk, crawl. But I went through that mental practice in my head beforehand. So you can do this at all distances with all sorts of things. Is when I'm nauseous, I'll do what? When it's dark and my headlamp dies, what do I do? When I'm at mile 50 and X problem comes up, how do I respond to that? And if you go through that practice in the moment, it's much easier to respond to. Versus, like, especially in ultras, if you're 70 miles in and a problem comes up, it's really hard to think that through. Instead, if you've like thought it out as best as you can, of like, if I have this knee pain, how do I change my form to make it better, or at least more manageable, then it's easier in that moment. When you've been racing, or you're in the middle of a race, even at a short distance, it's just that, at least for me, that part of my brain isn't turned on necessarily. So doing the work ahead of time, it's thinking through the worst case scenarios, because everyone thinks about what the race would look like if it went well. You hit your splits, you run this race, this part of the section, like the section of race better, you go faster on the downhills, there's this aid station here so you grab the water. Like, you think about all the good things, but what about the things that you're not planning for, or that aren't ideal? And they're just going to come up. And so it doesn't take a lot of effort to just think about what problems, this is the question I would ask, is what problems could potentially happen during this race? And then what do I do if they come up? And that reflection is really good, because then you can respond automatically in the race, opposed to beating yourself up. It's more of like, oh, I planned for this. This is what I do. I knew this was coming. Again, it's easier to do this when you have more racing experience, but I think if you sit down, or even like, you could Google common race problems, like start there if you're running your first marathon. Google common race problems and what to do about it. Like, you don't have to come up with the answers on your own. I've been able to do this because I have a lot of experience racing all sorts of races, especially ultras. So hopefully that helps. I think this is a super beneficial thing. Everyone talks about map out your splits and your nutrition. All of that's important. But think about, what if it goes wrong, and how do you respond to that? Hopefully you got something out of this video that you can apply to your life. If you like running content, my goal is to help people deepen their relationship with running, avoid injuries as best as possible, get faster. And if you like that stuff, consider subscribing. If not, I still hope you got something out of this video and you can smash your next race. So other than that, I hope I get to see you in another video sometime soon. Peace.